jump in as you would like to, but we want to hear from each of the 4 groups.
I'll jump. I jump now, I won't forget what I wrote down. So Carlos and MT and I met together, and I tried to take some good notes, so I hope that they'll jump in if I misstate something. But when we talked about what we were feeling now, we had some questions about how will we heal from so many of the challenges that we face and the anxieties that come to us. And we thought that the message that we'd want to give when we're thinking about how do we feel and what will we do is that we have to influence the future instead of thinking about now. Look at the big picture and think about the future and the future generations. And that message to parents might, as we've talked about before, and empowering young people to action. And rather than think, well, we're older now, there's nothing we can do. And so we talked about some ideas for spiritual healing, that our religions give us awareness of our feelings and how to move through problems and look at the bigger picture, and that we could focus on parents because we felt that the kids are probably feeling a lot of anxiety and fears because of what they've heard in school and in different settings, and that the children probably need support. And it's another way to take action in a community is to reach through even the younger kids. And that our message could be, is a message, a call to action. And it should be, let's see, I had a few more things here, that we were really thankful for being together. We feel a purpose and that we're not alone. And we need to recognize our privileges. And I think I had one more thing here, that we need to model the behavior that we hope for. And in the future, our message themes is how to find solidarity with our neighbors, including our neighbors next door, in the state and across the world, showing solidarity and again, focusing on the future to call people to action. I think I summed it up fairly well. Did Carlos or NT, do you have anything to add to that?
Okay, very good. Well, everybody hold on to those thoughts. Thank you. Very, very good insights. So thank you. Another group?
Well, I got volunteered for group 1. So, and that was about halfway through. I was gonna volunteer Pat for it, but she bailed. And so we discussed a number of things. And one of them, of course, was that we need to be the voice for those people and things in the environment that oftentimes don't have a voice. And one idea was maybe some more programs for children, because us adults are somewhat stuck in our ways, whereas the younger ones are still a little more flexible. So we might be able to get some more feedback by providing programs for the children to help educate the adults in their lives. And we also discussed the hopeful signs, even amid this conflict, of the world coming together to say, hey, no, this is enough. You need to stop doing this sort of thing. And the the hope that it won't just be because these are white European people that are having trouble, that it'll extend to other areas in the world where that might not be the case. And where we have vested interests in the current powers somewhere else that might prevent us from speaking up against the problems that are going on there as well. We also discussed the fact that despite the commonality that we have in all of our faith traditions, that we're called towards stewardship of the earth and assisting our fellow man, often those elements are not put forward as much as some other more divisive elements that are in our faith that sort of tend to divide us rather than unite us together, which in reality, you know, we're just one human race and we need to get together to help solve these problems. So, did I miss anything, guys? Nope.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Another group. Anne, do you want to go?
Like Odile will jump in.
Okay.
Let's see. I think one theme is that I think we all felt that this was very helpful to feel, as someone else has reflected, that we're not alone. And that there's deep companionship that ties us together. And part of that relates to breathing. And Joan reflected that she needs more time to think about that, but it was something that really spoke to, I think, many of us and me as well. There is the possibility of really acting for life, and we all feel a great responsibility to do that. And the way that we do that is been strengthened, I think, by the sharing and Rosemary's reflection. As Joan emphasized, our voice is really important as we move out in the world and do the advocacy and the actions and the presentations, that our voice is infused with the zest for life and love, and her experience of the raising a point of view that includes and embraces the ethical and the spiritual is sometimes can be jarring in certain settings to others, but is also so important and also strengthening. We also focus on young people, wishing that we could relate and bring into this work more young people and how to mentor them and both encourage and focus, as I think some of the other groups have said, on the importance of young people and the children. And we also found that it was really, really helpful to hear today from these different traditions, and to see the commonality, but also their distinct flavors, and yet how they're all based as was said, in the deep listening to the earth and the sacred. So please, if I've left out any piece or reflection, please add in.
Thank you. And I think you just convey our message, the text takes away, but just saying regarding, our breathing, as John also was saying that we need also during our meetings, to be more aware about, the way, how to make this practice, helpful in our own ministry, to breathe, breathe, is God, is life, God living, giving us his energy. So we need to be more and more aware about this, this aspect of breathing. And and also the importance to speak, as Anne said, from an ethical perspective. It's we are, as an IPL, we are not a environmental group as such. We have this deep, connection with our own values, spiritual values. So it's so important to speak from our ethical perspective. And also, and listening to our traditions, also know our tradition, but from this perspective, also listening to the earth, through our traditions. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We have one more group left.
I took some notes for our group. I hope Marlene and Carmen will jump in too. We talked a lot about despair and the spiritual response to climate despair. We talked a lot about sort of letting our spiritual and ethical values lead more in terms of being anti-violence, anti-war, anti-poverty, like those being spiritual values that should be at the fore. Let me see what else we've got here. Sorry, I've got the baby is unhappy. Yeah, we talked a little bit about trying to involve, trying to elevate maybe like the leadership of faith leaders to take faith-based stances on environmental issues, which is something that there should be noisier about. We've got, having, empowering faith leaders to take faith-based stances on environmental issues. A dedication to education. Let me see. I don't know, what did I miss? I'm sure I missed things.
Great summary.
Okay, so wonderful.
Joan, excuse me, I know I left
Yes.
something out that NT said that I thought was important.
Oh,
And
great, go ahead.
she didn't raise her hand to remind me, but she mentioned that she noticed that even in her neighborhood, that you can model the behavior that you want your neighbors to follow. And if they see you cleaning up the trash after the windstorm, or recycling and other water use things you're doing that you might mention as they see you watering, that it's a nice way to start a conversation and also to model and bring up topics that are in a non-threatening way.
Mhm. Okay, great. Thanks, Judy. So these are all really, really good points. I'd like to go another step and just have a conversation here. Are there some themes that seem to be emerging, other ideas that people have, or something that someone else shared that sparked an idea or a dream? Or so I just want to open it up to that kind of sharing here.
One thing that I was concerned about is that, we have people signing statements, etc., but there is not a real commitment that the people that are signing these statements are actually immersed in their communities and educating their communities on these spiritual ethical values. And so could there be different statements coming from different traditions and a commitment that education will follow on these statements? And, you know, it could be, you know, a campaign or so in which, how do we lift up, some of the folks said, you know, how do we lift up the spiritual dimensions of addressing the very life of our planet? What are the ethical dimensions? Help us with the language of spiritual and ethical dimensions of lifting up the very life. So that's the engagement in action.
Okay, that's a great point, Marlene. So just, you know, from your group then and your thinking, so is that something that needs to happen at, you know, a faith leader level or a committee level in different communities, or at a adjudicatory level, or what is there any conversation about that? Like it, you know?
I don't recall that we spoke about how we would do that, but it was something that we were very concerned about, that, you know, we're not lifting up in the public forum other than the statements of the different traditions, etc. And I think the other thing I would want to say is, you know, I liked what Mike said, that we really have to maybe begin to write things for children that brings out the spiritual and ethical dimensions of the caring for our earth.
Okay, great. Some other responses or other thoughts?
Well, Rosemary, in our group, Rosemary talked about the issue of, in our Catholic tradition, I guess, or parish communities, there is not much concern, or at least voiced concern about the issues of the earth, of our ecological responsibility as Christians, etc. We did not talk about how to address that, but it's a concern that we shared.
So that kind of goes back to what Marlene and the other group were saying.
Yes, yes.
Well, and I'm struck by those themes because one of my first introductions to IPL was a board member, Dodie Hawkins, who was from the Methodist tradition, coming to my local church down here in Los Lunas and giving a presentation on climate change to, you know, a church that was different than her church. And I wonder if that model isn't something that we might try and infuse to some degree, or support one another to do, is within the faith communities in our own individual traditions, to get out and ask to do presentations, get the word out, that so we're really doing what Marlene said, is that we're not just signing a statement as if, you know, or people aren't just signing a statement, they're doing the educational and advocacy part within their spiritual tradition, or perhaps beyond.
Okay. Thanks, Anne. Some other thoughts on this or other topics that there's a something emerging or theme.
I like that idea that there was a partnering between someone else from a different church going to, they were evidently open to listening to one of our board members speak. I don't know how that would work in different places, but we've talked about cool congregations, but we haven't talked a lot about guest speakers, I guess.
I'm wondering if we couldn't also have like a popular education pamphlets or something that talks about that people could reproduce, that helps with giving some information for different families, etc. That different parishes, different groups could just have available, so that there's more education on the spiritual and ethical dimensions of what of what has just come out from the UN. That there's a popular educational pamphlet that could be a calling.
Mhm, mhm. So to relate the secular, so to speak, with the maybe in a general but more specific way with the ethical, spiritual, and the UN has 3 reports. Actually, one has been on biodiversity. This one that just came out on climate, and there's another one that'll be coming out, I think, in April.
I'd just like to add that it was either Anne or Terry that pointed out that different issues are linked, and we need to realize that. An example would be that there's an ecological element to the immigration crisis.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, and what in the Catholic tradition are calling that is integral ecology. It's the earth and the social elements, and we need to address them together.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think Emma mentioned that from our group, saying lead with our ethics. This care for the poor, and it's all.
Mhm.
I don't know if this is a good time to throw this in, but I mentioned that I was moved by your prayers of place in your slideshow at Bears Ears, and also I've been moved by at places that need healing and attention, but also starting to be involved in the Forest of Bliss project, the actual planting of trees. There's something moving about putting a tree in the ground, and I guess Emma said that too, from braiding sweetgrass,
Mhm. Mhm.
connecting that. And I know Robin Wall Kimmerer has written about how not to be an invasive species, and the thing about deepening. And I feel like that helps our faith communities heal. That has seeing the deepening of the connection to our local ecology, and the prayer and connecting prayer to that is a unique thing that we bring, and that moved me in your presentation.
Mhm. That's a very good point too. Thank you. I want to just, people can jump in as well, but I want to go to this whole area of young people, young adults, and youth or children, and which IPL has thought about, more than thought about. We've tried several things that haven't worked. And so, I think we're all kind of on the same page or same board, but the hows of doing that, and doing that in a a way that is collective and will get groups of people engaged. Does anybody have any ideas? I don't think it can come, you know, us organizing things. We could be working in tandem with, I think. Any thoughts around that?
I have a little bit of experience with that at our synagogue because our preschool and our religious school teachers are very open to the environmental things. So we sometimes worked with them on curriculum with projects that have to do with either recycling or planting and talking about what the earth needs. And it's a way that we also hand out information to parents when they pick the kids up after a day like that. And sometimes our committee goes to the classrooms with a book or a story. It's not frequent because they have a whole curriculum and all, but it's been somewhat effective. So like, for example, this is pretty minor, but we're passing out seed packets on Earth Day to the kids in the religious school and the preschool to take home in their New Mexico oriented plants that are sustainable and not, and you know, water wise and also pollinators that they can take to, and it'll have something attached that'll give a little brief review about Earth Day and the purpose of the seeds, and they'll all take them home and hopefully some of them will plant the seeds. But it's little, but it's a little step in.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
We, in past years in McKinley County, were able through the water department of Gallup and the funds that were available would hold an water and energy awareness day for elementary grade students. Now it's offered as a model because the workshops, there would be hands-on workshops that were provided by state agencies. The water department would come with a game that had a wonderful water game where the children would walk through the entire hydrological cycle of water from its origins, you know, in the stream, and then to the clouds, and then rain, and then to snow. But it was a whole educational process of how water circulates, you know, through the planet. Then there would be those coming from the wildlife with injured birds, eagles, hawks, and they would explain the wildlife and teach the children how important they are in the ecosystem. Then the Navajo Nation would come and have something on water and erosion. But there were at least about 15 different workshops that were provided by the state.
Wow.
And the state departments offer these agents, these representatives to come to educate the children. Now, of course, you know, it was a huge organizational thing, but it might be possible to invite one agency at a time to have an event for children. And they were very well attended, where there were over 300 children coming from elementary schools in McKinley County. But at least it showed what is possible, maybe not on such a large scale, but it might be possible to invite one or two of these agencies to come, because it was very much grounded on the earth. And it was, you know, they would have practical things about the earth and what's happening to the earth and the things we need to learn to care for the earth and the plants. So that was just a wonderful, and then unfortunately, as is so many cases, the funds were not available. And then the Elizabeth Barola, who was Barica rather, who was the water department, you know, director, was shifted to another part of the department. So it just shows you how things come and go, but it certainly modeled for us what would be possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know,
As you're saying that, Rosemary, I'm thinking, there's don't want to put it dualistically or in levels, but it's like the faith traditions in reading sacred texts, there's all kinds of things about water, say for instance, but how do we expand on that in the tradition itself to deepen that so that there is that sense of responsibility and the sacredness of it that we've lost, that it's not just a resource or not, I don't know if I'm making sense, but to have the integration of all of that, because the spiritual element, religious element, or a deeper understanding of that is usually what's missing. And that's where we have a disconnect and everything becomes a commodification.
So it might mean having something that shows how important it is to understand the whole sacredness of the water cycle. And then another part of the program would have the spiritual. It might be that pairing of the hands-on, understanding, but also then bringing forth the depths of that sacred, water.
Let's see. Someone else had their hand up. Oh, Pat, and then Marlene.
I have two things. One, we ended up talking about, I was so thankful for the person who said programs for children, because I had started with education, because I think people in general need education, but they pointed out that so many people are living now just day to day. They don't have time for this. So they presented the idea of programs for children. And of course, then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to take years. But our library here in Gallup is doing a lot of things. They're going way beyond books. So I'm thinking if you could connect with the Library Association, that might be something. And then the other thought that just came to me from what you just said was about the indigenous feeling for sacred water. I think here in New Mexico, we can connect with that. And I think if people are introduced to the idea of Robin, what her name is, you can't read that or listen to her without it touching you and you feeling connected with that.
Great points, Pat. Thank you. Marlene?
What I'm thinking is, how do we reach young adults? And I think it's through music. And I'm wondering if there's some groups out there that could help us with a concert that would bring these kinds of issues to the fore. I'm thinking of Eileen's group, but I don't know of some other groups. But I do think that this would be a place where we could have music. There could be encouragement for getting involved. There could be some pamphlets available for getting into action, but a calling forth in that music for an ethical and moral action. This is, to speak to them. But I think if we want to reach young adults, I think we have to do it through music.
Great point. Thanks, Marlene.
Invite them to write songs.
Ah, Pat, that's great.
I agree. I think that's a nice key.
Songs and poetry.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great ideas.
Okay.
I think the other thing too, if we do something with music, I'm wondering if maybe there could be, there could be a regional areas, that if we contract and if there's some money that we could use for education, and it could be done in the Permian Basin, a group there, and another group in the Gallup area, and another group, so that we can have it in different places rather than just one big or just one try. But contract with these people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Great creative idea. Are there others that haven't spoken too much that would like to share some thoughts or some things? Okay, are there any other things that anyone would like to share? Well, maybe we could just move towards wrapping up for the day. This has been very rich,